Hey, Audrey, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we get to interview you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, Courtney. Thank you so much for having me on your show. My name is Audrey Birnbaum, and I am the author of American Wolf, From Nazi Refugee to American Spy, and it is my first book that I've published. Um, I am a new author. I have a previous career as a physician with a specialty in pediatric gastroenterology, and I started my career very young, infantile. I became a doctor when I was 22. And so when I decided to retire in 2020, I was, I guess, 58, and which was on the young side for retirement. But for me, I felt very ancient because I've been doing it for a really, I guess, like 35 years or so, which is like a pretty good career. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do all these things I haven't gotten to do because I raised three kids and I, was working full time and I was really tired. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do like ballroom dancing and I'm going to be in a chorus and I don't know, I had all these ideas. And then the pandemic struck like a minute after I retired. So I think I took a couple of classes for like a month. And then I was like, aha. And so that changed my entire equation of what I was going to do. And I ended up becoming a writer. Um, so I guess retirement didn't really stick. And now I have this whole other career, which I'm delighted. I actually am super happy. I think I prefer to be really busy. I'm still squeezing in those other things though on the side.
Love that. I would love if you could tell us more about what your book is about.
Yes, I would love to. This book is really like a passion of mine, with the way medicine was a passion of mine. It didn't come out of nowhere. This was sadly my father passed away in 2018, which I actually think was really led the way for me to retire in a way. It was a tough year, 2018. I had had a ski injury and I was off my feet for a couple of months from work. It was the first time I'd ever not worked in my life. And when I had to write a eulogy for him, I was like a week out of surgery for my fracture, really bad fracture. And my father I knew he was a Holocaust survivor, and he had had this experience of escaping Nazi Germany in 1941, which was already like the war had been in play for a couple of years. He had lived through that, and he told us stories growing up, and I knew that I had to include that in his eulogy. But I no longer remember the details. Like, we talked about it when we were children, but you know how people stop talking about it. They think like, oh, you know the stories already. We don't have to repeat them. But my sister and I have an older sister, a few years older than me. We both were like, oh, how did he get out? Did he leave from Portugal? Was it Spain? Like, we just didn't remember, all the nitty gritty details. And so I remembered that he had written everything down when he retired. He sat down for really months and wrote down as much detail as he could remember. And he wrote 350 pages of details that he put into what he called his book, like a memoir. And so I had it somewhere in my attic and I kind of dusted it off. Getting to my attic was not easy on crutches, but when I did it, I dusted it off and I looked at it and I thought, this is great. I have everything here. This is terrific. And, long story short, I was able to do the eulogy, and then I was home for 2 months, not able to work. And I read through this thing. And I said, this is really like a treasure. One day I'm going to publish this. Fast forward, went back to work, dragged myself back to work for those last couple of years. And when I did finally retire, and I looked at it and I said, I think I can rewrite this, but it really has to be rewritten. This is a amazing story of growing up through the war with the rise of Hitler, escaping by the skin of his teeth, um, making it over to America, immigrating to a country that really didn't want him. They didn't want Germans. They didn't want Jews. Coming of age in a time of great difficulty, having further challenges here in America, further hardship, and then going back to Germany, with mixed feelings, both feeling homesick for his country, but also it's a country that threw him out, didn't want him. He went back as an American intelligence officer in the height of the Cold War and had to come to terms with, just this sort of mixed identity as a German, as a Jew, as somebody who had tried really hard to become an American but never quite fit in. So it was a story that just needed to be told. It just needed to be rehashed in a way that would be relatable to everyone, and I think very timely for today with the themes that it had.
Love that so much. What inspired you to write your book?
Well, the inspiration really was that, in a way, for me, it wasn't that I fancied myself a writer, though I had always written. I as a physician, you're always writing chapters and consult letters and things like that. And I think before that, I had always been, when I was younger, I used to say, I want to be a doctor or journalist. That was something like I always had thought. So I think like the seeds were there. But here, the material was there. My father had so many details. So like I had the material. But for me, I wanted his story to be told. I felt like, Holocaust stories should still be told. And I felt his story was unique because it wasn't just a Holocaust story. It was this immigration story, this continuation, the part about being an intelligence officer that was different too. This part about how difficult it was to get here and how much America had tried so hard not to let people in, which was, is I think now people are understanding that a little more about how America played its role in keeping people out. So I felt like, yes, this is like sort of a mission to still educate people about it. And, there are a lot of survivors aren't left anymore. And so it's our second generation survivors who still like need to tell stories. So I felt his story was a good story. And he also came from a really crazy family. So there's a lot of like humor in the family structure and a lot of also sadness and pathos of what happened after he came here and some of the losses that ensued afterwards.
Amazing. When writing your book, who are you thinking of when it comes to who your book is for?
So that's a really great question because I really want to say everyone. There's a wrong answer, right? Because every time somebody says, when you write a book, make sure you know your target audience. This is one situation, I'm not a commercial writer. I'm not sitting here writing a series and being like, this is my series for young adults. This is my series of science fiction writers. This is one book that actually really has a wide audience. And maybe that's not the best marketing strategy, but I want to tell you, if you like memoirs, it is written in the style of a memoir. I write it in the first person in my father's voice, which was very challenging to do. As a child to an adolescent to a young man, I am embodying my father, which was a very emotional experience to be him and kind of commune with him after his death, which was, I might cry a little. It's very, made me very close to him, after the fact, and know him better and understand him for the man he became, warts and all, But so people who love memoirs would like it. It's very emotional. And it reads almost like a novel in a way, too. Do you get that? Oh, my watch disagrees. Sorry. Must have said something that sounds like Siri. And then I think the people who like history and World War II, there's a lot of World War II, all the way up through the Cold War. And of course, there are people who are very interested in the Holocaust itself as a Holocaust story, but I really don't want to pigeonhole it as a Holocaust story. It does have that, but the themes of triumph over adversity, immigration, identity, and nationality, those are universal themes. Wartime, all of that. Could be you could be a Syrian refugee. It has some of those same themes, and so I think, and then I feel, and I've heard from people because I've been approaching educators about the book because I really wanted to get it into the school system. And some people who've read it who are educators feel that because the protagonist, my father, was, when he came to this country, he was 11 and a half. And it goes through just till his early 20s, that a YA audience could definitely relate to him she's a child going through this and then coming of age. So it is a very broad audience, but mostly everyone who reads it, they feel very emotional and tearful when they read it. But they also laugh because I put a lot of my own humor in it, which I can't say he did when he wrote his memoirs. You can't see it that way, but I found a lot of humor in his crazy family. His mother was neurotic and his father was a bit of a clown, and so there's it's just like, I have like gallows humor from medicine. There's a certain, gallows humor that you need for getting through your day, and I think I sort of brought that into the book as well. So there's that too.
Love that. How long have you been writing and what made you really sit down and start?
So as I said, I think there was always like a writer in me. My my parents were crazy too, and they always like had me and my sister writing. We went on a lot of vacations when we were young to Europe. They were big on like education, and traveling was one of it. And they were like, okay, you guys are keeping the journal, so we have all of these journals that we kept from. And when we traveled, we were like, okay, if we go to France, we're going to see every chateau and every church, not just one, not just a representative sample, but we're going to see every single one, and we're going to write about all of it. So we kept the journals, and and then, well, there was this in fourth grade. My little, I'm not going to keep this for my secret, but I didn't do so well in reading, but not because I didn't read well. I read very well, but we were supposed to keep a log of books, and it was a question of numbers. Did you read enough books? But my mother made me read classics, so I didn't get the counts right. So I got a bad grade in reading, and so over the summer, my parents made me read and write the book reports. So I did a lot of forced writing in childhood, and and then my father had a publishing business. When I was 11, and he couldn't afford to hire any staff. So I was the editor and proofreader, and my sister and my mother, we were proofreading and editing and everything. So there was like this sort of writing in our backgrounds, I think, that always like carried through. I wouldn't say it was just a creative writing. Um, and then, as I said, like when in medicine, I wrote some book chapters and original papers, but scientific, so, liver, pancreas, diarrhea, reflux, so it's been there in the background. And I think that I feel it was more in my head, the idea that when I saw patients and I had to think of what was going on with them, I thought of them in terms of a story. Like, what are they telling me? I never was prescriptive in the way I saw patients and be like, all right, you have a stomach ache. Okay, let's just do some blood work and get some stool tests and we'll do an endoscopy. It was always, what are they telling me? What are they not telling me? What's their background? What's going on in their family? What is the story of this patient? And I think that it was, I actually think that's what made me a good doctor. I think that's why patients like me. But I also think that was profoundly inefficient and time consuming. But I like, it's the way I like to work. Great recipe for burnout. Um, to really actually spend that much time with people and actually want to know what's wrong with them. But yeah, but I really did love it. But so that's again the very long answer.
Love it. What was your schedule like when you were writing your book?
I'm not great at schedule. I'm so immersive that if I would sit down to write and then I would get into like the flow of writing, I would disappear into the process, and then I didn't even know where I was. I didn't know what couch I was sitting on, what room I was in, what time it was. It'd be like, it's 4 o'clock. So I would say that I'm not somebody who, again, it's not like a job for me. I had my job already. This is more like passion. So if I was in the flow of it, my husband might shake me and be like, "Are we having dinner?" And then I'd be like, "Are you making dinner?" But it was like, it was I joke about that a little bit. I mean, he's very undemanding and profoundly supportive husband, but it was, if I was on a roll, I was on a roll, and I could go till 2 in the morning. So again, not always the healthiest, I wouldn't, uh, tell anyone to take a lesson from that, but that's how I operate. It's in the if it's, coming to me, I'm just going.
Love that. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
Um, I know some people like to have noise, but for me, it's really peace and no interruption. I need, um, because I really enter my characters in my books, so I need to not have somebody like coming and saying, "Hey, can we, go out for lunch or something?" Like, I just need to be, uninterrupted. "Ma, don't call me." Yeah, that's better for me.
Love that. What is your favorite writing snack or drink?
So, unfortunately, again, and I think, again, when I was working, and maybe this set me up for it a little bit, as a doctor, like, a lot of times I mean, my husband would not believe this. I would come home from work, and I would say, like, "I didn't go to the bathroom all day," and he's like, "That's not possible." And I would be like, "No, I was so busy. I didn't eat. I didn't go to the bathroom." And he's like, "No," but that is unfortunately like a habit that I continue sometimes, where get like, by 3 o'clock, I'm like, "I think I just had coffee today, and I don't think I ate." And so sometimes I'll just like grab a yogurt. I'm not usually eating while I'm working. I do tend to sip coffee throughout the day. So I tried this mug that's self-heating called the Ember, which I'm not promoting anything. I actually didn't work for me. So now I just have coffee, and I have like a little heating, unit that costs like $10, and I just put my mug on it, and then it stays warm, and it gets really concentrated, and then then I don't like the coffee, and I throw it out, and then I make another cup, and that's kind of what I do all day.
Love that. What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
I really prefer novels. I do read everything. I have a book club, with some wonderful women whom I love dearly, and we really try to mix the genres to make sure that we expand their world. So we will throw in some classics, and we'll read some memoirs, and we make sure we read things from other countries to, just to make sure we have a full experience. But if I had my druthers, I would say, um, novels about real humans with, real conditions that I can relate to, epic novels that span, multi generations, deeply emotional works, um, uh, and if they have humor, and absurdity to them, I think that I like that as well, because that suits my writing style as well.
Love that. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
So in this case, I would have to say no, because just the nature of how I became a writer. This wasn't a plan I had, that I, said, "Oh, I've always wanted to be a writer." So I have authors that I love, but I wasn't trying to follow in any particular person's footsteps.
Love that. What books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
I have so many favorites. Again, my mother, to her credit, an amazing reader, amazing vocabulary, and an insistence on the classics at a very young age, probably too young. So like when my friends were reading "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret," which I never read, I was reading, I don't know, the Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Hunchback of Notre Dame. I was always crying. I was crying my whole childhood. Why did I? And I was thinking today, my daughter, I read a lot of Thomas Hardy, Dickens growing up, and um, Anna Karenina and Madame Bovary, like, but like in like sixth grade, like young, really young, and Edgar Allan Poe. And I read science fiction too, like the classics, like Asimov and Ray Bradbury and Jules Verne, and they were memorable. I mean, I loved to read. I read a lot. So I give my mother. We went to the library every week. We took out books. I forgot to return them. My parents made me pay for the whatever the fines were out of my allowance. I took pennies out of my wallet. I'm like, here, here's 15 cents. They don't make you pay anymore. It's not fair. I had to pay all those late fees. Anyway, so yeah, that was growing up. My mother was amazing at exposing us to everything, which was good because when I got to medical school, it stopped. There was no time. So I went through this period from, so again, kind of weird, but I started a 6-year medical program when I was 16. So I also like kind of young. So I kind of stopped reading for this whole period. So it was a little bit of a wasteland. So luckily I got this education really early. But I was about to say my daughter, who's 27 and way smarter than me, is reading some of these classics now at a more appropriate age. And she just read Tess and the D'Urbervilles by Hardy. And so now when I talk to her about it, I'm like, oh yeah, like now it makes more sense because she's reading it as a proper adult. And I was thinking, all these men wrote these books about these tragic heroines, Madame Bovary and Anna Karenina and, Tess. And they killed them all off. Like, why did these women have to die at the end? I find that really interesting. These wonderful characters, they had affairs or they had love in their lives, and they all were punished for it with death, which I think is, that's not something I could really understand the cultural significance of, back in the 70s. Now I think about it. So the next time I write a book with a strong female character, I promise not to kill her off. It's my promise to myself.
Love that so much. Now as an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you automatically grab it?
Oh, that's easy. Zadie Smith, one of my favorite writers. She just came out with a book called Fraud. I haven't read it yet. I'm saving it for book club. Barbara Kingsolver, loved Poisonwood Bible, just read Demon Copperhead, fabulous author. I really like Jonathan Franzen. I know his books are going to be a trilogy. I just read Crossroads. I had read The Corrections years ago, but I think his books are, just like what I'm talking about, multi-generation, multiple flawed characters. You start out maybe not liking them, and then you peel back the onion, and the layers are there, and you're like, oh, there's the motivation for who they are and the background for why they are the way they are. And that's how I feel about my family, right? Like, when I'm writing my book, like you're reading about, an American Wolf, my book, even though it's a true story, you want to say, God, my grandmother was a bitch. Sorry, I could say that. Can I say that? But then you're like, but no, go back a generation and understand the fear and the worry and the neurosis that made her, she saved the family. What made her do that? Why was she like that? Why did she suffer from chronic dissatisfaction? That's from Vicky Cristina Barcelona. Chronic dissatisfaction. There's reasons behind why people are the way they are. So you have to be also compassionate towards your characters, because, which again in medicine, people come in and they seem, they're addicts or they're eat badly or they whatever they are. You'd be like, how can you walk in and be judgmental? You have to be compassionate to your patients as well as your characters, because people are not born bad. They have anxiety and they have they have whatever is going on in their life, and it's your job to help them, no matter how they irritate you. But that is our job as authors and as physicians. So I think there's a connection, the empathy piece.
Yes, love that. What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
Yeah, that was really hard for me. As I said, I was in the desert. And here's where I had this other piece of luck. My mother-in-law was a librarian. And so she actually, like she was reading, unlike my mother who read the classics, my mother-in-law knew what was coming into the library, like this is popular. Here's an Alice Hoffman book, here's an Ann Tyler book, which was really helpful to get me back into the world of reading. But I think what I would say to somebody who hasn't read in a while is read something you've read already. Rereading something at a later age, first of all, the familiarity of it. It's like watching a movie you already watched. You'd be like, it feels like an old shoe. Or your old pair of jeans. It's comfortable and familiar. You'll remember it. And you'll be like, oh yeah, that's why I love this. And it's a great way, read Harry Potter again or read something that you loved. And then because your mind has to, reading requires not just reading the words, but being able to put your brain in that place where you could visualize. And that's almost like a skill that you have to relearn. I think it's easier to do with something you already know. That's what I would do.
Love that. On the other side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
To just do it unabashedly and non-judgmentally. It takes, I was surprised. Like sometimes I read people who are great writers and I think, oh my God, that's such a great sentence. Why can't I write such a good sentence? But, then I think to myself, well, maybe it didn't start out that way. Like maybe, when I wrote American Wolf, I rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. I went back over it and over and over it again. And it got better every time. I mean, sometimes I wrote crap. And then I would be standing in the shower or walking down the street and I would think about like a segment of it. I'd be like, oh, I have to redo that. That's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. And I went back and I rewrote it and it was better. Yeah, every sentence can be better. It can be made more beautiful. So you just, think about it afterwards and go back and make it better. But first, just get the friggin' thing down on paper and say what you want to say, you know? Um, what is it, the mamas and the papas are like, you got to go where you want to go, say what you want to say. I think that's, you have story to tell. It's the first thing is storytelling. What's the story you want to tell? Put it down. You don't have to have the ending yet. And then go back over and look at it. There's plenty of time. Um, and it doesn't have to be the best story in the world. It's like you don't have to have like, you don't have to have been in prison to write your memoir. It's, people can tell good stories without the most amazing dramatic thing happening to them.
So true, so true. So I'm gonna go off script, which I've done
Okay,
more often recently, and
great.
willing to answer this. What would you tell someone who's just starting in the medical profession, since that's your background?
Oh, well, I really hope people do it for the right reason, which is for the because they want to do good, because they want to take care of patients. I think otherwise it's so empty, I mean, you really are. You have people really are trusting you to take care of them. They're in a very vulnerable position. And if you're going into it because you think like, oh, it's a good business or it's a good job, I'd be like, oh, that's uh first of all, it's not such a great business. There are better. So yeah, I just hope that people are doing it for the right reason, that they understand that how vulnerable people are and they want to be heard. So listen, really listen. And also, when you're listening, don't just listen to what they're telling you, but think about what they're not telling you. Because if you don't ask the right questions, you won't get the right answers. I was thinking about AI. My husband and I were talking about this to be like, well, could AI figure out what your patients have? And I'm like, well, if you feed them just what they tell you, no, because you don't know what they're not telling you. So you have to find out, you have to dig and say, okay, they say, oh, yeah, yeah. Yesterday I went to I had a stomach ache, but it's because of that Chinese food I ate last night. You'd be like, well, that's what they think. But, you know, did you ask them if they started in medicine yesterday? It's all the stuff that they don't tell you that they haven't made the connection to. So you have to be a little bit of a detective and think about all the things that they're not thinking of. So, and that's the fun of it too. So it can be a lot of fun, and the relationships can be wonderful if you allow it. Long answer. Having no
Love
short answers. Too many words.
No, it's so amazing. Love that so much. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
All the things I don't tell them. So many things, Gordy. It doesn't have to be one.
As many as you wanna share is fine.
Okay. So, well, when I was a kid, my parents, like as part of the classical education, they also only let me watch public television. So I used to pretend to be sick so I could stay home from school. This is like in grade school, and watch regular television, like reruns. So I would take a thermometer and I would like hold it against like a light bulb, and then it would be like 107 degrees. And then I would shake it down so it would be like a proper like 102 degrees or something. And then I would say, Ma, I don't feel good. Because I no good grammar there. I should have said I don't feel well, but I was like, I don't feel good because it's more dramatic. And then my mother would be like, "Yeah, you look green." This is a good acting. And then she would say, like, you should stay home. And then I would stay home and I would lay on the couch, and because you had one TV back then, and I would watch like I guess Brady Bunch reruns or things that like the other kids, maybe Partridge Family, the other kids were watching. And so as a result, when my own kids would say they didn't feel well, I never, I never believed them in a million years, that could possibly be true. But that was one of many little bad behavior things that I did growing up. So yeah, they don't. I was a bad girl. People don't believe. They're like, how is that possible? Like you went to medical school. How could you have been bad? I was like, I was terrible. It's terrible. That was only one little thing.
Love that so much. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
I would say that I am working on another book right now, which is a little bit on hold because I'm working so hard to get this story out. And it's a totally different book. It's a novel, and it's about a group of people who are on a hike in Croatia, and they are, people from all walks of life, and they're in different relationships, and they are, it's a fun book. It's just totally different. So I didn't know that I could write anything else from my head, but now I know that I can. So I'm excited about that. But again, it'll take its time. It's halfway there. So now I think like I could say I'm not a one trick pony. I do have the writing in me. But I think it's clear I'm going to be writing many different kinds of things. It won't be like this one genre thing. It'll be just whatever comes to my mind, the crazy mind. And uh, but otherwise, I'm just really my goal for this book is to get my father's story out, but also to get it to help educate people about this important time of in history, and hopefully to get it to young people, um, because people are forgetting, and that's so important that they not forget and that they think of this as something that happened to real people, not just statistics. So that's what American Wolf is all about. That's my current mission.
Amazing, so important. Where's the best place for readers to find your book? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option and the best place to connect with you?
Yes, thank you so much for mentioning it. So I have a website. It's www.audreybirnbaumauthor.com, and I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook as Audrey Birnbaum Author. The book is currently on pre-order at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And it's officially launched October 23rd, but you can place an order now. And I'm starting the tours, of you know, book tours and talks, and I will be speaking at the Reagan Presidential Library in January. They have a special program on Auschwitz, and I've been invited to speak there. So yes, I will hopefully be able to sign copies around the world. I'm thinking big. No, I hope it gets traction. I really do. And I hope people enjoy it. I really do. And really feel something when they read it. Laugh, cry, all of the above, every emotion.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those links in the show notes. That way everyone can find you. And again, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. It really was a pleasure.